think what's driven me in this process of recording stories and talking to my granddaughters through this medium is the fact that my mother came from an era where a parent had to be a very disciplined, it was a role, a definite role. You were a parent. You weren't a person. You were a parent to your child. So your child was sort of, in a sense, at an arm's length. And as a result of that, sadly, my mother was never known to me when she was alive because she died at 56, which was terrible. I was only 30 years old and I had a little boy that she adored. She never met my second child. So raising my own children, what was most important to me was that they saw me as a person, doing my best as a parent, yes, but as a person with weaknesses and frailties and disappointments and bruises. And they saw me cry. I never saw my mother cry. They saw me have too much wine. They saw me dancing on a table. They saw me in that way. And the connection that we have to this day is one of it's a deep connection. And that's because I allowed myself, I've always wanted them to know me as a person so that they could be free in that way when they had their own children. And that's exactly how they are. The morning of my wedding day, my father, who was quite a handsome man, in his youth he was very, very attractive. He was in his dinner suit, feeling rather splendid. So we got into this beautiful bridal car and drove down to the convent where I went to school because I had promised the nuns that when I was getting married they would see me in my wedding gown. So we called into the convent. The nuns were all waiting in the front parlour there in their little penguin suits, starched backs, and I walk in with Dad. And all of a sudden, they went. They just disappeared. And one of the nuns stayed, and I said, Sister Claire, where have the girls all gone? Is there a problem? And she said, oh, Jenny, I think that they're not happy because you've married a man much older than yourself. I said, we're on the way to the church, sister, not on the way back. Well, he's my father. In fact, some of those nuns taught him when he was a little boy at St. Joseph's. And she said, oh, I'll go and get them. So they all flooded back in. And my dad said, what a shame what you've done to my ego. I thought I was looking rather wonderful. Well, the wedding ceremony was rather interesting because Kevin's grandfather was estranged from him and his mother, but it turned out that we were getting married on the same anniversary of his wedding to his second wife. So they popped along, which was really lovely, and we thought everything's going to go so smoothly today. People we haven't seen and who haven't seen one another are there, and it's all so lovely. However, as we were taking our vows, looking lovingly into one another's eyes, we heard this loud bang, crash, thud. And I looked around to see my Uncle Jimmy disappearing into the pew. And I started howling because they picked him up. Instead of carrying him out or supporting him out gently under the armpits as any normal person would, my family, being strange, decided they needed four of them, and they put him over their heads as though he was in a coffin, and they were carrying him out, and I thought he was dead. And I started wailing, and my mother's going, it's all right, keep going. And then later in the evening, Mum was dancing with the parish priest. She'd had a few drinks, and fortunately she slipped. She broke her ankle, and the next day Kevin and I were on the Princess of Tasmania, dressed down so no one would know we were on our honeymoon, and suddenly I saw my mother coming along the pier. Oh my God, here she comes, Kev. She's limping. She's Mum, for sure. He says, oh God, I hope not. Anyway, she started singing out to me from the pier onto the top tier of the ship. Are you okay? Are you all right, darling? Oh. I have so many memories of my Nana. The most important, of course, is that she is my mentor. And when my sons and their wives had these little girls, I knew exactly how to behave around them and to just fall into their beautiful selves, because that's what my Nana did with me. She loved me to parts and pieces, and she had fun with me, which was lovely. And she taught me a little bit about rebellion, and she was always on my side. We had little secrets, nothing harmful, but secrets. But here's one of my favourite memories. My Nana had a gate in her back fence, and this led to a laneway which went up to the park on one side and down to the street on the other. And in those days, there was no TAB. So people who wanted to bet on the races had to do it off. It was all secretly done. And my Nana had a book. It was called a book. So people would bet, and you'd write down what they bet, and then you'd have to pay them. And this was illegal. So my Nana had a rebellious streak. And that showed in her nature across the board. And she kept all the tickets and all the money in her Astrakhan knitting bag, which was full of bits of wool, twisted up needles, crochet hooks and buttons and all sorts of things. So if the police were going to go through there, they were going to get something stuck in their fingers, and it wasn't going to be my Nana's money. So she used to just chop down, open the gate with her Astrakhan bag, and people would come and bet with her. It would all be done secretly in the laneway, and then they'd listen on the radio, and Nana would see how well she'd done or not. So I just loved that Astrakhan bag. Well, this is a little story about telling the truth no matter what the consequences are. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out well. But telling the truth is what matters, because that's all about you being courageous in your life. So one day in Ararat, when my Nana was very poor and she had 7 children to look after, and her husband was never around, and when he was just a nuisance. So anyway, the newsagent said to Uncle Bobby, who was my mother's brother, that he could have the use of a bicycle to deliver the papers, because money was very scarce. But when the bike was available, Bobby wasn't around, so Mum put her hand up. I'll go, says Mary. So off she goes. She didn't realise that the brakes on a man's bike are on the handlebars. And on the way home with the bicycle, she couldn't help herself. She had to get on it. And there was a hill. And Mary got on the bike, and it felt so good. So she put her hands out like this. She had gorgeous hair, and it was flowing behind her, and she felt so free. And all of a sudden, she knew she needed to stop because she was hurtling by this stage. But she couldn't. She didn't know where the brakes were. Never been on a bike before. And bang, all of a sudden, straight through the butcher's window. Well, not only did she have the cost of the butcher's glass, she went right through the sausages. And then she had to go home with the mangled bike and say to her mother, I know it's mangled, and this is why I did it. And that's one of the things that I love about my mum. I don't think she ever lied in her life. And therefore, you see, she was free. You never have to remember if you haven't told a lie. There's a little episode in our lives when we lived in Singapore with Lucas when he was a baby. And at the time, my mother was ill. She had cancer, and it was very hard for me to be away from her, but I needed to be where my husband was. And Lucas and I had a wonderful bonding experience during that time because there was just he and I during the day. And one time he fell over and I was looking for Band-Aids and I couldn't find a pharmacy. Singapore was a very different place in those days. So I wrote an aerogram to my mother and she sent some Band-Aids over. And I had those Band-Aids for many, many years without realising that I'd stored them. So when Lucas and Sam went overseas for their brotherly bonding experience for 4 months, I discovered the Band-Aids and tearfully gave them one each. And I said that these Band-Aids would bring their grandmother's energy and my energy also to any little wounds or bumps and bruises that they had while they were away, and to keep them safe and that sort of thing. And we met the kids in Paris. And Kevin had a funny turn and had to go to hospital. So Lucas rushed into his backpack and got his Band-Aid and put it on his father's heart and said, "Don't worry, Dad, you've got Nana's Band-Aid, you're going to be all right," which was a very emotional experience for all of us. We all bawled our eyes out. And then when he got to Prague, he had the tattoo on his inner arm here of a Band-Aid. And whilst at the time I wasn't very fond of tattoos, I thought that was a superbly wonderful tribute to the love of a grandmother that he really didn't know. Well, having told a little story about my mother telling the truth, perhaps a little one about my Lukey boy would be appropriate here. When he started at the new school, when we moved to Brighton, up to St. Joan of Arc, one of the kids there who he wanted to be friends with said he couldn't be part of the gang unless he stole a Matchbox car from Griselda's, which was the local toy shop in Church Street down in Brighton. So Lucas didn't feel good about it, but anyway, he did it. So we went in there and I think he stole 2, just to be sure. Anyway, I walked into his bedroom the next morning and there were these 2 little cars right in the doorway, where I had to actually walk over them, bump into them, these tiny little cars, because he didn't feel good about it. So I asked him and he said, yes, Mummy, I stole them. So we were off to Meetung that weekend, but before we went, we took him down to Griselda's, which was the toy shop from which he stole the little cars, and we forced him to go up to the counter and say to the owner, who knew us well, "I'm Lucas Winwood and I'm a thief. I took these from your shop without paying for them and I'm very sorry." So he gave the cars back and we paid for them because they were no longer in boxes, so they couldn't be resold. And the shopkeeper said, "For telling the truth, Lucas, you can come back in. You are banned from the shop for 2 months." And then after the 2 months, the shopkeeper rang and said, "Lucas, the whole new range of these wonderful Masters of the Universe toys have come in and you're going to be the first child in Brighton to see them." So he invited Luke into the shop on his own to view these beautiful toys and gave him a toy. The craziest thing I ever did for love was to put my Vespa away, having been gifted it by my lovely husband. I crashed it through the gutter, and as it was hurtling towards the bedroom window, I threw myself onto the grass and let it crash into the window, and I broke the indicators in the mirrors, and I put it away. And I said, "You're so pretty, darling, but I won't be riding you again." However, a friend of mine renewed her expertise in photography, so we decided that I would make a nude calendar for Kevin using as a prop the beautiful lilac Vespa that I had recently thrown myself off. So there I was in the backyard, completely naked, in my riding boots, and my helmet made my face go like that. And we took all these photos, and I had it made into a calendar for Kevin for his birthday. And shortly after I threw a bathrobe over me, the man came to deliver the wood. And Sasha and I were absolutely in stitches, thinking if he'd just come 5 minutes earlier, he would have copped an eyeful. So that was one of the funny things I did for love. So the family all started skiing, and they all took off like a rocket, but not me. I was not good. I sat on the pommer and my body was dragged up the mountain, most undignified. And eventually we ended up in America. And here we were in Aspen, beautiful, beautiful Aspen. And on the very first run of the very first day, as I got off the chairlift on the very first little place where you get off, I tore the ligaments in my knee. And I had to come down in a skidoo. Sam was skiing beside me saying, "Are you okay in there, Mummy? Is it nice and warm in there? What's it like in there? Have they got sandwiches?" All that sort of stuff that kids ask. And I had to be taken to the hospital. I was in a very cute bunny suit, tiny little thing I was at the time, and they had to cut me out of it. So the next day we had to go into the hospital so I could be fitted for a leg brace. And the nurse said, "While I'm away with your husband, Kevin, getting x-rays, a man will come in, and would you mind telling him to sit on the bed beside you, take his clothes off, except his undies, leave the undies on, and I'll be back." So with that, a man came in, and I had to say to him, "The nurse asked me to tell you to sit on the bed beside me and take your clothes off, but leave your undies on." And at that point, I had to laugh, and so did he, because it was Rupert Murdoch. So when Kevin and the nurse came back into the room, I was sitting in my knickers and Rupert in his wife fronts, and we were in deep conversation about perhaps people that we might have known in common. And Kevin's face absolutely fell. His chin hit the floor. Okay, well, the difference between being a parent and a grandparent is that as a parent, it's your first priority is to keep your child safe, make sure that they survive, even you and your inexperience and all your anxieties and all the emotions that you go through as a mother, being sent home with this precious little baby, and you're responsible for it. And that sense of responsibility never leaves you. Here is Lucas, 45, and Lucas and Sam is 42, and I still worry about their safety. Still say, "Don't hurt yourself. Look out here, look out there." And also you have to discipline them and teach them the values that are important in life about being kind and looking out for their friends and loyalty and all of those wonderful attributes that you want your child to have, a sense of justice and kindness and care about others. Whereas as a grandparent, that job is somebody else's, and you can just enjoy every aspect of your grandchildren, allow yourself to relax around them. You can give them an icy pole for breakfast. You can you can let them have ice cream at midnight. You can wake them up to see a full moon. You can make them pancakes at 4:00 in the morning. All of that is so special and precious as a grandparent, because you just get to enjoy them and the happiness and joy that they bring to your life, and hopefully you reciprocate that. And you're a safe place for them. Lots of little secrets I already have from my granddaughters, and I treasure that trust. It's a beautiful thing. The only advice I would give my granddaughters about fashion is that it's a personal expression of yourself in the world. And however you feel you want to present yourself is exactly how you should do it. You don't worry about putting, for instance, stripes with pattern. Just make sure that your underwear is lovely. Your bra must Match your knickers. It's very important because that gives a person a great sense of self-care and self-nurture. Besides, you do feel rather wonderful. But there are no rules. You have whatever you like, do whatever you want, and don't let other people dictate to you how you feel you want to express yourself in the world, because fashion is the same as everything else. It's the way people see you, the way you want them to see you, or don't. I don't care what people think of the way I dress. Some of my friends don't want to be seen with me sometimes, and I could say the same for them. Rather dull beige, navy blue. But I don't judge them because that's who they are. Dull, beige, navy blue people, and I'm not. So you do whatever you like, have fun, and love yourselves because you're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, this is a little snippet of my Lily Grace, who was such a surprise and came into our lives with such a beautiful, gentle entry. And she's the kindest child. She's emotionally intelligent, which is stunning. She's been like that since she was able to communicate. She believes in fairies, which I do, so we share that belief. She calls me Tink, and I call her Perry, because Tinkerbell and Periwinkle are fairy sisters. And when Lily was 3, she said to me one day, Nana, we're fairy sisters, and I'm the winter fairy, and you're the summer fairy, and our time together is very precious, Nana. She went like that with her little fingers. And she said, because when the winter fairy meets Tink in the summer kingdom, she has to be very careful not to stay too long, so their time together is precious, because her wings will melt. And Tink can't be too long in the winter kingdom either, because her wings will freeze, and neither of them will be able to fly. So the time together is precious. And that came from the heart and the age-old wisdom of a little girl who could barely put 2 words together. She was only 2.5. And so we used to share all of those lovely little moments and the secrets that we have between us. We call peritinks. We go to the Peritink beach, and that's our special little beach. We do special peritink things there. And she's a highly intelligent, studious little girl. She's creative. She writes and paints. And the loveliest thing is, while she's doing it all, she sings and hums. She's not even aware she's doing it. She's the dearest, dearest, loveliest. So here we are talking now about little Charlie Wren, our birdie. She's the cutest child. You're just a beautiful girl, Charlie, with all those lovely curls, that little heart-shaped face. Just want to kiss it and kiss it and kiss it. And those curls that flop all over your face. I love you, Nana, you say. I love you, Papa. You just love everybody, Charlie. You're soft and sweet, but you have a very strong sense of self. And if you want something, you know how to whinge for it. You're very good at that. And you draw beautifully. You're a smart child. And, you know, they say that animals have a special connection to humans, and they know good ones when they see them. And look how your dog, Rama, loves you. She loves you the best. And you love her. And look how you are with her. Just the most beautiful little pairing. I love the way you are gentle in your life, the way you have a little bit of caution in you, and how much you love Papa. That's very special too. He just loves having you come and sit and cuddle up and snuggle up to him. I love sitting on the couch with you and watching little movies and things like that. I love our dances, the way we dress up. That sort of thing is just so lovely as a nana, to see that lovely, gentle softness in a child. And you have that. You're a dear, sweet, loving little girl. And we're having dinner tonight at the Railway Club, so I can't wait for that. I'll be sitting right in the middle. Okay, so here we go about Layla Bug. I have to tell you, what a child. I just absolutely adore her. I'm devoted to her. She's got a lot of her mother and a lot of her father in her. But I didn't raise Tammy. I raised Lucas. And I can see him in her all the time. Little things that she does. She's very determined. She has a mind of her own. She knows exactly who she is, what she wants to do, and where she wants to go. There's no confusion about who Layla is. And I love the way she dresses up and changes 4 or 5 times a day. How she puts stripes with spots and checks. She's got a tiara on and she's got a cape and a helmet and a funny gloves, and she scoots around with her legs stuck out the back. Layla's a free spirit. And she's always going to be that way. I can see that in her. Not that she doesn't care about other people. She certainly does. She's a very kind child. Recently, we took her to the graveside of her great, whatever he was, grandfather. And when she found out what he did when he was alive, she wanted to dig him up so she could help him because he had such a big job to do, and she was determined that she might be able to help him. So there's that side of her too. But it's that free-spirited self-expression, the cheekiness. She knows when she's being funny, and she's deliberately funny, and she can be a right pain in the neck. Yesterday we were trying to film, she was going All right, so here we go with little Maggie Jean, that dear little pet whose journey into the world was so fraught with difficulties, hurdles to overcome, challenges to meet. Interestingly, she was born on the 4th of July, so she's always been the Jedi princess.
4th of May.
And what is a Jedi princess?
4th of May.
What did I say?
4th of July.
Oh, the 4th of May, the 4th of May. The 4th of May, there's a booper. So you don't have to get this perfect, you see. Anyway, 4th of May, so there she is, our Jedi princess. And of course, you can't be a Jedi princess without a challenge. And that dear little child had the tubes up her nose and tape on her face and the oxygen and life support for 9 months. Just think about it. How determined she was to be here, and thank God for her. She's just the most wonderful child. And every achievement that Maggie has made has brought extra joy because it's an expression of her determination and her spirit to be with us and to be part of the world. And I can't wait to see what Maggie achieves because I know she's here for a very good reason. And I want to be alive and well and happy to see whatever that is, Maggie, that you do, because it will be special. We just adore you, little Gaggy. It is more important to love than be loved, because when you love like I do, with my granddaughters, for instance, and my family, particularly the little ones, I love every breath they take, every move they make. Oh, that sounds like a police song. Anyway, they can't do any wrong. Just the fact that they exist in the world is enough for me, and that love I feel for them comes into my own heart, and it's the most satisfying thing in the world.